Good morning, everybody. My name is Roger Evans. I'm one of the co-founders and a director of the Institute of Psychosynthesis. And I want to talk today, this particular time of year in August 2025, about a key program, an introductory program that we run called the Fundamentals of Psychosynthesis, which leads to many other training paths in this work. Now, before I go any further, let me say a little bit about psychosynthesis and about the Institute. We founded the Institute a long time ago in the early 70s, and the critical piece here with psychosynthesis is this is a new and very distinct psychospiritual psychology. Now, those words mean something very specific, which is we train people to connect to their deepest essence and being, and as such, begin to look at the world through a different lens. And that lens has a spiritual context and a personal context. The Fundamentals course is run over 3 days, and it's an introduction to this very dynamic and distinct way of looking at the world psychologically. So let me say a little bit more about the fundamentals. This course opens you to a level of depth understanding about yourself. And for many of us, for many of you, this period in our lives, and particularly this time of year, is a transition where we're looking at next steps, we're looking at maybe career change, we're looking at a different way of thinking about our profession, whether that's in coaching, in counseling, in psychotherapy. Most importantly, whether it's also looking at us at a different way of seeing our world. And many of us are in an existential crisis. By that I mean we're asking core questions about how we want to live our lives with our families, in our relationships, and also professionally. And this first course is Fundamentals, and we have two of them in September this year, both online and face-to-face with the same dates, the 19th to the 21st of September. These courses, these two courses, really give you the opportunity to step back and look at your world, yourself within a psychosynthesis context. Now, for some, and I think this is really important to say, psychosynthesis is like the best kept secret of the 21st century in terms of psychology. And I say that because we all know about the Freudian, the Jungian, and the behavioral context of psychology. This is different. This is distinct. This is why we have created this course to give you an introduction to this new way of looking at yourself and your lives. Let me just pause for a moment in terms of what is the fundamentals about. I'll explain in some detail in a minute how it works. But the critical thing is if you're interested in creating this context for your lives, if you're interested in really having another way of thinking about the world, thinking about your families, thinking about your relationships, thinking about your professional lives, then we have we have offerings that enable you to do that. The fundamentals is the first step. The next step, this course is a prerequisite for our MA programs. We have four MA programs, two online and two face-to-face in London. And these MAs, one is in psychology and the other is in leadership and organizational coaching. Now, those MAs, they last for 2.5 years and they give you a ground, an inner ground to start to not just think about your life and to experience your life in a different way, but it also gives you the potential to work differently and to create a career in either counseling, psychotherapy, or coaching. Plus, to have a new context for your professional life, whether you are a social worker, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an educator, whether you're a manager, a leader, as another way of thinking about yourself and other people. It enables you to, in my language, to open your heart to the world in a different way. And you learn how to do that during these 2 years. Very powerful, in-depth process. That's what the fundamentals course leads to. So let me say a little bit about the fundamentals. This is a 3-day program. It's very intense, and it's a combination of deep experiential work through a series of exercises that enable you to step back and to wonder about your world, your history, but most importantly, to wonder about your own sense of self and identity and what it means to really tune in to that core identity that is you. It's a program that is about the heart, but also about the mind, because you need to bring your mind to bear to think about what some of these issues are about. For example, we give you a very brief introduction to psychosynthesis history through its founder, Roberto Assagioli, who both Joan and I studied with back in the 70s. And Assagioli was a remarkable psychiatrist. He spoke 6 languages. He was an extraordinary person in terms of thinking about psychology. And what he said to both Freud and Jung is, don't just focus on the basement or the ground floor of our psychological lives. Really, we need to also think about the upper floors and the terrace. We need to think about our aspiration. We need to think much more about our spiritual context of our lives. And what he did as a result of that, and this is what touched us so much, was that he brought about a psychology that included both, that included the the aspiration and what might be in terms of our purpose, but also in doing that, created a context for looking at history and how some of that might get in the way. So we introduce you to that at the beginning of the fundamentals course. We also then get you to look at some aspects of your personality in terms of the parts and how they work together or how they don't work together, and the implications of that for your life. We then look at a model that we've used really importantly throughout the training, which is that at your body, the physical body, at the feelings and your mind, in order that we see where we're attached. We see how we're controlled physically, how we're controlled emotionally, and how we're controlled by some of our thoughts. Not in order just to work through them, but to learn what it means to step back. We call that disidentification, the ability to see oneself in our physical bodies, in our emotions, and also at the level of our mind. Very powerful. We then spend some time with you looking at the whole issue around will and choice and how fundamentally important will and choice are. By will, I mean that closest aspect of yourself and the ability, as we connect to that, to make choices, key choices for what makes sense in our lives and in going forward. We also spend time looking at your own existential situation in terms of um, your aspirations, whether there's a spiritual context, and whether in that context, that spiritual context, whether you tend to avoid that, repress that, or whether you are open to that as a way. And we look in depth at that process in terms of how you deal with your own spiritual reality or not. And then finally, we look at how you're going to use this material going forward in your lives in terms of what you learned. Deeply experiential, you work together with other people in small groups as well as individually, and you have trainers who are very heavily committed to working with you, but also extremely well trained. You can see it as a standalone program, or you can see it as the starting point for something else and going into the MA. And if this really touches you at the level I know it can, it means building a base for future work in psychology or in coaching through those MAs. So who is this fundamentals aimed at? Who are the people who are asking questions about meaning in their lives, people who are really want to create the next step in their lives. People, as I say, in this summertime, very often we spend time in the summer reflecting on the next step, on where we want to be, where we want to go in our lives. Really important. It's for these people who want to take time out for 3 days to reflect on that journey, on their own journey, and their next steps. This is for people who, not just people who want to be therapists or counselors or coaches, but people who really want another way of thinking, a psychospiritual way, in terms of our language, to thinking about their lives. Really, really important. We have many social entrepreneurs that come to the fundamentals, people who want to take a time out of time and reflect on the work that they're doing, whether they're in small projects, locally, internationally. And these social entrepreneurs or change agents, I call them, they're so important in today's world. And for them to start thinking with a psycho-spiritual context. So it's not just about history, it's not just about doing things, but it's having another perspective on life. These guys are really important. A lot of teachers, educators come to us, and we've trained a lot of them over the last years, who want to bring another way of thinking about education. This is not to change the educational system, but it is actually saying the individual teacher, the individual educator, whether they're at a primary level or a university level, there's another way of being with students. There's another way of enabling these folk to find their own way. And that's what a psychospiritual context gives. Doctors, we've had a lot of doctors and psychiatrists coming to us because they realize that the medical model doesn't really offer the the opportunity. It creates a box that they want to step out, not to leave the profession, but to do what they do differently. And that's a very powerful step for many of these folk to take. A lot of leaders and managers come to us, not just to train as coaches, but to have a different context for how they run their companies, how they work with other people in organizations, but particularly for how they deal with themselves in very difficult relational situations. And we can help that. And I don't want to forget you personally with family and relationship because this is the core of our world, how we how we deal with our families, how we deal with our relationships, how we deal with the pain and the traumas of that, but also the opportunity to have a different way of thinking about our family. It's not just about our history, it's about how we deal with ourselves in relation to others now, how we deal with our kids, how we deal with our adolescents, families, and what it means to facilitate the adolescent process. Many folk who struggle with that come to our fundamentals and into our training. So these are some of the core constituencies that come to us. Really important to acknowledge not only that they exist, but there's a way for them to deal with their lives differently. Um, the next fundamentals, just so you know, the next fundamentals are happening in September. Both fundamentals dates, both for the online program for 3 days, is from the 19th to 21st of September, as is the face-to-face program that we're running in Hendon in North London. These dates, if you are interested, please, and I mean this seriously, please get in touch right away to make sure you book a place and you get a reserved place. The cost of the fundamentals is £350. It's not a For some, that may seem big. It's not. For 3 days, that's a very, very accessible price. And but please, if you are interested, please make sure you get in touch with us as soon as you can. As you gather, I'm I'm not only committed to psychosynthesis, I am absolutely passionate about seeing the effects and seeing the effects of both the fundamentals and of the training that we offer in the MA program. If you want some direct experience of that, go to our website, go to the homepage. We have some videos on that page that listen and that talk to some of the students because they're the people that I want you to listen to. Listen to what they're saying, whether it's in person or whether it's in online programs from all over the world, and listen to what they tell you about the impact of this program. There's also some material on the fundamentals as well. Take a look at it and really go to the website personally and uncover this best kept secret I was talking about earlier. And really important, really important that I say these things to you because I want to, if you like, say that this time in our world, this time in our lives, we need a different way of thinking about ourselves and our world that we're living in. My wife Joan has just published a really important text on psychosynthesis called Psychosynthesis, a Psychospiritual Psychology. It's now available from next week, from the 25th of August on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. But the critical thing here's a statement about the values that underlie everything that Jolie wrote about, but also everything we're teaching here. I'd love to engage you. I'd love you to talk to us. Please give us a call, and I'll make sure that somebody um, gets on the phone or talks to you on FaceTime. This is the time to make a change. And thank you for the opportunity of saying these things. Thank you.